Year 1789. I ain't Robespierre. Year 1840. I ain't Guy Fawkes. Year 1905. I ain't Lenin. Year 1968. I ain't Pol Pot. I am nothing like these men. I haven't dedicated my life for nations. I've stayed here still, faced through all of this. I have took no fucking risk in the name of ideals. Let's pull this train before it begins. I'm no hippie, no anarchist, no hypocrite, no hairy fucking terrorist. No propaganda will blow my fucking mouth. We've been fucked for far too long. And don't say I'm fucking wrong, no, cause if I was, we don't see it.
Hello and welcome to That Atheist Show. I'm Preston, that atheist dude.
And I'm Connie, that atheist lady. Tonight we're going to talk about the terrorist attacks in Paris and what's been happening with that.
Some reactions to it. Actually, that band that we just had as an intro is from Paris. That album came out about a year ago. They speak very much so about what we're going to speak about tonight. They definitely share our views, judging by their lyrics, so that's why I put them in the intro there.
Yep, definitely. Okay, so I think everybody knows about the attacks in Paris on Friday. I don't think there's anybody, unless you've been under a rock or something, you've heard about it. And then, of course, those are also not the only terrorist attack. Like, that's not the only terrorist attack that's been going on around the world as a result of ISIS and Boko Haram and other Islamic terrorist organizations. So we're also going to speak about those and just in general how the tactics that ISIS uses to get people to join up with them and the controversy over America taking in Syrian refugees and how all that ties in together and the irrational fears that ISIS wants us to have and how they want us to reject people because rejected people are more likely to join their cause.
Yeah, the thing about religions is that they provide comfort to those that really need it because their beliefs are met by this fantasy, this promise that can't be kept until after death. The whole idea of an afterlife is damning to our life, to the life that we live, because you're only looking forward to after death when you're convinced of these things like these ISIS.
And whenever your life is made unlivable by your circumstance and the way people around you are treating you, it makes an afterlife that much more appealing. Because
Absolutely.
if you are treated fairly, if you are treated with love and respect and kindness, this life is a good life. You're going to enjoy this life. If you are treated like you are less than human simply because of your skin tone or because of the religion that your parents raised you in, then you are going to not like this life and you are going to go out searching for people that are just like you, that are rejected just like you. And that is how ISIS has thrived.
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings that a lot of Americans have, I don't know about most, is that just because they're from these Middle Eastern countries that they are Muslim or that they are believers in this whole ideology that ISIS holds. ISIS follows the Quran. They follow it basically to the T. When you look at Muslims that we know about and other Muslims in those countries that are moderates, there are plenty of them, just like there are Christian moderates that don't believe in all these crazy parts of the Old Testament. The Old Testament has just as many horrible atrocities and just as many demands for atrocities as the Quran. People don't read the Bible, so they don't know this.
And then, of course, you have to put into consideration that a lot of people just kind of, like, people will say that they're Christian, but they don't ever really go to church, or they just kind of go along with it enough to be socially accepted.
And they
so
might wear modest clothes and things like that. They might go to that extent, just like the Muslims do when they wear their garbs and things like that.
Yeah, just to fit in. It's, humans are social animals. We want to feel as if we belong with our, with our tribes. Our tribes are much bigger now with the way the world is now than it was, but we are still very much that way. Our psychology requires, our emotional well-being requires feeling accepted. And so whatever is what's going on the most around you is what most people are going to just kind of go along with, whether they agree with it or not. Most people are afraid to say that they don't agree with it because they don't want to be outcasted.
Right. And living in New York City is crazy because I mean, this isn't just anecdotal. It's not like I saw this just a few times. Most of the people that I see dressed up in these hijabs and things like that, very American. Very American. They speak just like we do. They go into Starbucks. They go out and have fun at bars and things like that. Like, this is just how it is. Like, they dress up as part of their culture, and you'll even ask some of them, and they'll say that it's part of their culture, and they won't even have any religious ties to it and things like that. But the religious right of America will immediately condemn these people for wearing these things as, oh, you're a terrorist. And it's like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Like, that's just the most
what their
ridiculous
parents.
generalization.
That's how their parents taught them to dress. That's how they were dressed growing up, and that's just how it's been. And so they just, that's
it
just
is a lot of their choice.
Yeah, and also we need to bring up the fact that a lot of the way that ISIS recruits is not even through other Muslims. They don't go after other Muslims and try to convert other Muslims. I mean,
they kill other Muslims that don't follow their exact belief. That's the thing.
Exactly. They're killing Muslims too, and they will go after white American people that have extremist, crazy ideas, and they'll reach out to anybody that they can get to go along with what they're going along with. They will reach out to them. So if there's people like on Facebook, if you post a lot of anti-American, they're gonna be like, hey, we don't like that stuff either. You can align with us, because in Paris only one person
was from Syria.
The rest were from France and Belgium. They were not from Muslim societies. They were people from France. They were French people that just for some reason they were attracted to what ISIS is all about. Why? Who knows why? But they were. So whenever we have 25 governors in America, in the United States, that are wanting to reject Syrian refugees simply because they think if we let in these Syrian refugees, then we're just inviting ISIS into our country. ISIS is already here. And ISIS is already here through Americans.
They've already made it clear that ISIS can be in your backyard. They've made that clear enough, and ISIS themselves have made it clear enough that, hey, we're recruiting your people. They have it on the internet. They have it in freaking YouTube videos, Facebook. They're all over social media. You can access basically anybody through that. And to blame a bunch of refugees running away from these people.
Yeah, they're just wanting to go somewhere safe.
Right.
And for us to deny them access to somewhere safe.
And why isn't it safe? Let's go over that. Why is it not safe to be there at all? It's because we're literally dropping bombs all the fuck over their city that they just live in, that they're trying to find peace in. But ISIS is there, so we're bombing the crap out of everything. We're missing stuff, and we're
we're the ones
calculations
bombing.
wrong. Yeah, right. So why is it unsafe? Because we're bombing it.
we won't let the innocent people get out of there to be safe. So
well, they have nowhere to go, and now this is the point where they have the option to go somewhere, but we are shutting that option down. We're saying, we're going to bomb the shit out of where you live, but you can't go anywhere else. What? Like, what the fuck is that?
Which, I mean, these 25 governors don't seem to understand that they can't actually do that. Like, you know, if the federal government says we are going to accept this many refugees and this is how we're distributing them, they can't.
If
they can't not accept them.
Yeah, if they're really gonna deny this, then they need to go take down the Statue of Liberty themselves. They need to just go, just chip away at it until it's gone, and say, okay, now we can't let anybody in, because that's what it would take. Because that's ridiculous. That's what our country is fucking based on, to escape persecution.
And the totally ironic thing is that most of these governors are always talking about how Christian and godly they are.
These governors specifically are the ones that are part of that whole right-wing ideology that's always promoting the New Testament and promoting Jesus-like society, which, you know, is a thing, Christian society. But yeah, they're also completely hypocritically going against it. If you really look at the Bible, though, Jesus was an anchor baby.
Jesus was a Middle Eastern refugee,
was an immigrant
anchor
refugee
baby.
running away from persecution. Well, it was persecution in the Bible, but it wasn't historically proven to be persecuted. There was no actual persecution going on at that time for that specific thing. But Jesus and his family, before giving birth to him, were seeking, you know, safe haven. They found a little shed because they couldn't go to the hotel. And yeah, they were immigrants. And Jesus was the anchor baby. So they are completely going against everything that he is, basically, by doing this. In a literal sense, if you take it all literally.
And then this is causing a lot of racism to happen because people have this false assumption that all Muslims are brown people, that there aren't any white Muslims, and that somehow it's okay for... And then of course, we have the ones that they want to let in the Christian refugees, but they don't, but only the Christian refugees.
Right.
I'm like,
which
okay.
is just, wow.
Like, so there's going to be a religious test on before we let anybody in?
Yeah.
How does that work?
How would that go?
Like, how do you know that they're a Christian? Because I know that if I was going to get the shit blown up out of me if I stayed where I was at, I would say whatever the
Christian.
fuck I needed to say.
Yeah.
I'd say anything.
But if you look at it, though,
say.
What's really funny is that the Muslims would actually be able to just replace nouns. You would just replace a noun with something from the New Testament, and it's the same fucking religion. So you could easily.
Also, then if you think about it, that wouldn't actually accomplish anything because you could be an extremist that just wanted to get into America,
and you know the Bible well enough to be like New Testament,
and you just pretend to be a Christian long enough to get the fuck over here. What is that? That doesn't do anything.
It's
nothing at all.
It's
like,
the most illogical solution ever. Actually, I have the speech queued up.
There's absolutely no way to go about that.
I have the speech queued up. Let me play that.
Okay.
This is Mr. Donald freaking Trump. God, this guy is just so ridiculous. All right, here we are.
We cannot let them come into this country, period.
It's a sentiment spreading like wildfire now in both parties. No Syrian refugees in the U.S.
We can't have another problem, and this could be one of the great Trojan horses.
Governors across the country are now taking matters into their own hands, closing their state borders, from Alabama to Arkansas to Indiana, Michigan, and more.
I am now requesting that the President and the federal government cease sending refugees from Syria to North Carolina.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced his state will not accept refugees from Syria, precisely as President Obama was speaking on the matter in Turkey.
When I hear political leaders suggesting that there would be a religious test for which person who's fleeing from a war-torn country is admitted, when some of those folks themselves come from families who benefited from protection when they were fleeing political persecution? That's shameful.
That a thinly veiled hit on presidential candidate Ted Cruz.
I have to say, particularly in light of what happened in Paris, that's nothing short of lunacy.
Cruz, whose father fled to the U.S. from Cuba, told us today he will introduce legislation this week banning Syrian Muslim refugees from America.
What would have happened if your father was trying to get from Cuba to the United States and the political leaders here said, nope, we don't think so, because who knows, maybe you could be somebody who could, commit crimes against America.
Well, see, that's why it's important to define what it is we're fighting. If my father were part of a theocratic and political movement like radical Islamism that promotes murdering anyone who doesn't share your extreme faith or forcibly converting them, then it would make perfect sense. One of the people who carried out this terrorist attack in Paris was a Syrian refugee who came in, and the president apparently is perfectly fine with bringing people into this country to carry out similar acts of terrorism.
Ben Carson wrote House Speaker Paul Ryan calling on Congress to stop paying for programs to resettle refugees.
Congress, I think, should defund all the programs that allow these people to be brought here immediately, today.
Ohio Governor John Kasich, who initially supported bringing Syrian refugees to the U.S., changed his mind, citing security concerns.
Look, there is no way that we can put any of our people at risk by bringing people in at this point.
Okay, so first I have to point out that Ted Cruz was like, yeah, well, you see, it's different for my dad because, he wasn't an extremist dude man. Okay, well...
And then he speaks of a theocratic political movement, and that's him.
How were people supposed to know that he wasn't a bad Cuban?
He created a theocratic, politically fucking motivating son that is trying to push for the same bullshit that ISIS is doing. Like, what the hell? He ended up breeding the same damn thing that ISIS is anyway. Fucking Ted Cruz is the Tea Party. The Tea Party is the same Christian movement as ISIS, just without the guns right now, because they're part of America, and they've moderated to that extent. Like, what the hell? Ben Carson is still calling for the death of everybody. He's like, we'll torture him. We'll figure it out.
But he says it so calmly and nicely, and like he's on so many drugs that everybody thinks he's just so nice.
He's such an asshole. God. That's seriously, like, it's just so delusional, because we are a country that's built on this principle of saving whoever wants saving, because we have the ability. We have a huge ass country. Like, isn't it one of the biggest countries?
Well, we do have. Then we also have. Yeah, it's close. Yeah, then we also have the people that are saying, "Well, we're not going to take any refugees until we don't have any more homeless veterans, or we don't have any more homeless people. Period." And blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, we have all of the ability to solve those problems. We are just not doing it because of selfish assholes. The same selfish assholes that won't let us. That are saying this. They're like, okay, so it's like, okay, well, you have a problem with the homeless problem? Go help the homeless people.
Right.
But do they? No. And then they're the same assholes that are so against abortion because adoption is an option. But how many kids have they adopted? Fucking none.
Right.
And so they're so against all of these things because we have all of these other problems that need to be fixed. But they
refuse to fix those problems at all.
They won't do anything. No, they won't do one fucking thing to fix any of the problems because they somehow think that it's just magically going to work itself out if we ignore it. If it's not on their doorstep, it doesn't matter.
It's the trickle-down effect. It'll fix. Now let's get into basically how everybody on the left now. There's something called the regressive left that's been talked about by Bill Maher and all that stuff. Sam Harris about. Basically, because we've been talking about the right the entire time. Now, there are parts of the leftist movement that basically they allow these ideas to be bred. They see the Quran and they defend it as saying, "Oh no, it's just religious texts. Let them believe." And it's like, at what point do you stop letting them believe? Once you have a book that's, and the Old Testament is just as guilty, it has all of these verses in it that are clearly hateful, clearly separationist. Like, there's so much in there. It's ridiculous. At what point do you point out these books and say these books are wrong? Okay, it's great that you're moderate. Yeah, and it's great that there are moderates out there. It's awesome that they're able to look at the psychotic crap and call it psychotic and say, okay, we're not going to believe in that stuff. We're going to believe in just the good stuff. Cool. That's awesome that it exists, but let's point that out. Help us point that out, because you are supposedly reading the book since you believe in it, right? So point that shit out and say, hey, let's reform this. I mean, at some point you're going to have to realize that if a human is changing a religious text, then obviously God is not intervening. Hopefully they get to that point eventually, but
yeah, people don't want to call out ideas because they're
afraid to offend.
Yeah, there's this wrong idea that if you criticize somebody's beliefs, that you are criticizing the person themselves,
right.
Or if you don't like an idea and you want to destroy that idea, that you want to destroy the person. But
right.
That's not true. It's that we see that these ideas are so destructive that if we don't stop them, it is going to destroy us all. And that is exactly what is happening with ISIS, is that these ideas don't just come from nowhere. These ideas come from Islam. They did not just randomly come up with this shit one day and decide that that's how it was. This stuff is in there. It's just that they have been allowed to go this far with it. People were too afraid to offend them and actually attack the beliefs themselves. Right. And so where we are saying, we shouldn't judge all Syrians or all Middle Eastern people as being these crazy people that adhere to all these beliefs.
Even if they're Muslims. Even if they're Muslims.
I mean, just because they're Muslim doesn't mean they adhere to these crazy beliefs, but these crazy beliefs are in there, and that's how people get to this point.
We need to point that out and do something about it. We need to figure out how to get these books out of people's hands, or at least those verses out of the books, because that is what's we need to treat those books truly. What I think truly is, we need to treat those books as historical fiction. We need to read those books the same way that we read Greek texts, just like the Odyssey and the Iliad. We need to read these Bibles and Qurans and Torah the same exact way and say, hey, that's how people used to believe. And we figured out all this cool stuff.
This is also why religious education is extremely important. Not
as
teaching
history.
or just as cultural,
cultural history
stuff. As, social studies or whatever. It should cover, this is what this culture believes and this is where it comes from and blah, blah, blah. Is because if everybody had a better understanding of what everybody believes and why they believe it, and the fact, just open the door to the fact that, hey, there's other people out there that believe shit that's not the same shit that you believe, it will make people think about it harder. And whenever they can see the similarities
and the differences,
then it will help people use their critical thinking skills to not go to such extremes as this.
Yeah, Christianity and Judaism, they've had, what, 2,000 years, over 2,000 years to moderate and figure things out. Islam was created as a fan fiction of Christianity. It came, 1,000 years after, something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know, a few centuries after Christianity. Islam came to be from Christianity, even involves Jesus in it in some of the older texts and things like that. So
it's kind of like Mormonism or whatever. It's a branch.
Mormonism is very recent. Exactly.
And the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're branch-offs of Christianity. Christianity is like the trunk, and these are just branches. Right. And so what we have with Christians being so afraid of letting anybody learn anything about Islam is that they are not they think that it's something totally different, but it comes from the same place. They're both Aramaic religions. They come from the same stuff.
Right.
And but people want to, like, it's an us versus them, but the Christians and the Muslims are not very different.
Right.
But it helps ISIS for that us versus them to be going on, because that's what they want. They want people to be pitted against each other. They want they want the world to be chaos. That's what they want to happen, and we're totally playing right into their hands the way that we react to everything that they do.
Right. And people are trying to say that Islam is not the issue. When you look at the books and you look at the core teachings of Islam, that is the issue. The fact that moderates exist does not take away from the fact that these people are using the core traditions and core fundamental beliefs of Islam. Period.
The exact same way that the people that fundamentally follow Christianity do horrible things, just like in Uganda where they're burning gay people, and in Nigeria and all. Whenever you get to the fundamental core beliefs of these religions, atrocities begin to happen. People, whenever you remove whenever you make people think that what happens to them after they die is more important than what happens to them while they're alive, you can get them to do insane things. You can get them to do harmful things. Whenever people stop thinking that each other is literally all that we have and start believing that they need to, impress some higher power, and that's all that matters, that is literally all that matters. Like, you'll hear Christians say, only God can judge me, or, it only matters what the Lord thinks, or as long as I have Jesus's forgiveness, that's all that matters. And they really believe that that's all that matters, and then they do this crazy shit.
They pray instead of doing stuff. That's one of the craziest things. They pray instead of actually taking action and doing things. And that's all based on their belief.
Because they think that, whatever happens, that's just God's will. Mm-hmm. And Muslims think the same thing. Whatever happens, that's Allah's will. Allah wills that to be that way, and great. That's just everything. Allah's great all the time. Like, God's good all the time, and
all the time.
Like they think the same stuff. It's literally the same stuff. They mirror each other identically. Like, it's the same. Yep. Same damn thing.
And
but nobody wants to admit it. Everybody wants to be like, "Oh no, we're not like them."
The major problem is that this has been happening for so long now, and we're still making all the same mistakes. So what we want to do now is get into Sam Harris' reaction of what happened in Paris. He made a podcast just on, I think, Saturday, explaining how he feels about this Paris attack. So we're going to get into that here now.
This is the big story of our time, and it is an incredibly boring one. Right? Just let the boredom of this just sink into your bones. Realize that for the rest of your life, you're going to be reading and hearing about and otherwise witnessing, hopefully not firsthand, the lunacy and attendant atrocities of jihadists. Please pay attention to the recurrent shrieks of Allahu Akbar. This is the catcall from the Middle Ages, or from Middle Earth, that we will have to live with for the rest of our lives. So this fight against jihadism and Islamism generally, this is a generational fight. This is something we are doing for our children, ultimately, and our children's children. And we have a war of ideas that we have to wage and win. And unfortunately, we have to wage it and win it with ourselves first. And again, this requires an admission that there is such a war of ideas to be waged and won, which is the purpose of my most recent book with Maajid Nawaz. But the balance has to swing. Denying this problem, denying the problem of Islamism, denying that Islam, the religion, has a unique problem at this moment in history, that has to become as unseemly and as reputationally costly as any dangerous expression of bigotry now is. It certainly has to be more costly than an honest discussion of the problem is. People are referring to these events in Paris as a wake-up call. Who on earth at this moment needs a wake-up call? If you didn't wake up on September 12th, 2001, there may be no hope for you. What will it take to get your attention? There are no surprises anymore. We have to relinquish our capacity for surprise here. There is nothing so destructive that these people won't attempt it. The only thing that has prevented them from killing millions of people is a lack of technology, and we have to ensure that they never get it. But the idea that our enemies are sufficiently like ourselves, and that they won't set this world on fire, is pure delusion. Most of you aren't even comfortable with the word enemy, right? To refer to jihadists as our enemies, somehow that is provocative. We have grown so effete as a civilization as to imagine that we have no enemies, or if we do, they're only of our own making. And when people on the right call them barbarians, well, then that is just demagoguery. Those are just our own demons springing into view. You have to get some perspective here. It is not mere wartime propaganda that we will one day look back on with embarrassment to call ISIS a death cult, to call them barbarians, to call them savages, to use dehumanizing language. They are scarcely human in their aspirations. The world they want to build entails the destruction of everything we value and are right to value.
I'm just going to end it there just for now. We're going to kind of reflect on what he's been saying. Connie, you want to say anything first?
I mean, he kind of says some of the things that we have already covered, that, you know, the fundamental ideas of Islam cause the problems that we are seeing now, is that these are people that have taken it too far. They've taken it too seriously.
They've taken it to the extent of literalism to where it's supposed to basically be practiced. You know, the moderates, I always like to say, hey moderates, you should really thank secularists and secular humanists, because if it wasn't for them, you would be probably murdered for not believing in the books the correct way, the way that it's supposed to be believed. If it wasn't for secular ideas happening in the past few hundred years, we would still be under theocratic law, being beheaded for not following the Bible to the T, which is what's happening in ISIS.
Yeah, without secular morality,
which is just without religion. That's all it secular means.
Yeah, without secular morality, we would still be living in the Dark Ages. It was secular ideals that drug us kicking and screaming to where we are today. And we are still trying to drag people kicking and screaming into the 21st century and to treat each other like human beings. People like to treat people unlike them as less than human. Like, that goes back to that weird whatever need that we have to be like each other. For some reason, there's people just want to conform and be the same as everyone else, kind of like, you know, in elementary school, whenever somebody had the cool shoes and everybody wanted to have the fucking cool shoes because those are the cool shoes, you know. And it's just that on a bigger scale. It's the same crap, the same childish nonsense, but just for adults.
Right. And Sam Harris mentions that it's a war of ideas. Now, I've already seen some crazy conservatives throwing out his meme saying this, but meaning it as if they should go to war. What he says is a war of ideas that needs to be won, meaning we need to take over their ideology, show them why it's wrong at the core by reforming the books maybe, or doing, you know, things like that.
We need to talk. We need education. We need, you know, open dialogue. Nobody's going to listen to you whenever you're shooting their children and blowing up their homes. That's not how you get people to listen to you. That's how you get people to be even more pissed off at you and want to join up. Like, okay, well, you know, the Americans are supposed to be helping us, but they're not helping us. They're just making shit worse for our lives. So our only hope now is to join up with who America is fighting against. We are making ourselves the enemies of the civilians in these countries.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, at this point, the barbarism is so extreme that obviously there's no escape from the violence at this point, but that does not mean that on the side we shouldn't be promoting proper education, critical thinking, love and you know, proper ideas. Just the ideas that allow the planet to prosper instead of destroy. Because when you're focused on the afterlife, you don't care about this life, you don't care about this planet. This is the only planet we have. Secular humanists realize this to the point where if there is an afterlife, let's worry about it after we die. Because nobody's come back to tell us what it's like. Unless you believe in Jesus.
So, like, yeah, if there just happens to be one, then we'll deal with it when we freaking get there. But right now,
we have
all
future
we have
generations
is
to
this.
think about. It's
We
a
know-
generational problem.
Like, we know that, like I have kids. I know that I have kids that are going to be alive after I am dead. So,
That's a fact.
basically, my afterlife is after I'm dead and the world that I leave for them.
Right.
That's my afterlife, is the world that is left for them after I'm no longer here. And the way that we're going, we're not leaving them anything worth having.
At this point in time, we're working on balance, but we need more support. Science needs more support. I'm going to just bring this in now. I went to a Bill Nye book signing last week and bought his new book, Unstoppable, about climate change and what we can do to make it better. First thing to do is to treat our planet like a home instead of a rental. If we focus on this life and this planet that we have right here, we're going to want to do the best we can to make sure that it's going to survive with us and beyond us so we can pass it down to our kids. That's just the fact of life. That's something that we can do if we work together.
But not if we work against each other.
Right, and these crazy ideas that ISIS promotes, that old Christianity still kind of promotes, but on a smaller scale. And, you know, even other religions have the same thing, but it's just these books that people take as absolute. They take as... we did an interview with Emo David, and when we talk about Nigeria, they were given the Old Testament by evangelists, and they're reading the Old Testament, and they get up to Exodus 22:18, I think that's the verse, where it says, "Don't suffer the witch to live." Their children are going out, doing something weird, and then people are just
they think they're
declaring
witches.
them witches. Yeah, and it could be anything. It could be as simple as this. The child is walking through your farm. He's just exploring your tomatoes. That week, all of your tomatoes die. Could be because of bugs, could be because of the weather, who fucking knows, but that person automatically associates the child being in the farm earlier that week to the farm
cursing
dying.
the tomatoes.
Now he puts the association through all of the supernatural bullcrap that's in his book. He's like, wait a second, she could have cast a spell. This kind of thing happens. It happens because the book says so. So I'm going to assume she did this to my crops. Let's put her to the fucking stake. Let's burn her alive. This is happening, people. This is happening as we speak.
Well, and then also, like, Emo has been getting death threats. Not only he's been getting death threats from Christians and Muslims alike. It doesn't. And here's one that he got yesterday. A call from an anonymous number. The person said, "Hello, lousy mouth. This is a reminder that we know you and are watching you very closely. If you believed in God, I would have asked you to pray to him. When we will pay a visit, nobody can save you." That's something that somebody said to him yesterday that called him.
And just to recap on anybody who's new to watching, Emo David is a good friend of ours from Nigeria. He's the first known atheist author that is involved in activism for secular ideas. He wants people to learn, be educated, and so that these kids aren't being killed in his country. He knows kids that are being
And just
killed.
because he wrote a book, all he did was write a book, and people want to kill him because he wrote a book. And
it's called The
because
Greatest
of
Curse on Mankind. It's about religion being a horrible thing, which is true.
And in Nigeria earlier this year, 2,000 people were killed by Boko Haram. I mean, people are being killed by Boko Haram every day. And all it took for him to get on their radar was to write a book, was to educate people, was to talk, was to have intelligent, open-minded, critical thinking conversations. They don't like that when people do that. They fear it because that's what tears apart their belief systems.
Yep. So we need to be more aware of the core issues that are creating these atrocities. We need to be aware so that in the future, and even now, we're not repeating the same mistakes. As of right now, we are in a cycle of, oh, this happened, it's just a bunch of extremists, don't blame the religion. Obviously, we agree, don't blame all of the people that believe in this core system. What I blame are the people that still promote the book. The people who, I mean, there's a lot of Christians in our country that have never read the Bible, and they give it to people, and they've not read it, and it's just like, what are you doing? You give that to a kid, they're going to read it, they're going to think a bunch of weird stuff, and it's just going to create a bunch of issues later on. It's just that those books, those holy texts, those things that people take so literally that they end up doing these things. They end up doing Paris and all the other countries that are suffering. I mean, we got Russia had 221 people killed on a plane. 22 children died somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all based on these ideas. And it's just, we have to do something. We have to at least take the first step to educating the people over there, to showing them that they're not alone by accepting them into our country as a start. As just a start.
Yeah. Basically, the only way that we're going to be able to combat these things is through education. And that's just it.
Yeah, if every time we kill their leader, another leader is going to replace them with the same freaking ideas. What are you doing?
And killing the leader just goes in with their beliefs. Like, they want to be killed. They believe that being killed makes them a martyr, and it makes them, like, super high status. Yeah, it's an empowering thing to be killed for carrying out their beliefs. So it does not help anything to be killing them. I mean, like, yes, we're not going to be. Sometimes we need to just kill them. Like, that's what has to happen.
Some people's beliefs are so incredibly dangerous.
All that we do. Like, that can't be the only way we go about this.
Right, some people's beliefs that are held are so incredibly dangerous that it would be morally bankrupt to think that keeping them alive will be a good thing. That's a reality of life. Like, if you see freaking Timothy McVeigh and he's setting up those bombs up there and you're sitting next to him and you have the ability to stop him by pushing him off, the building or something like that, would you do it? Obviously, most people would do that. But, it's one of those things that it's hard to take each instance, sum them all together, but we have to be aware of what's causing these beliefs. It's the freaking books. We need to do something about these books.
But, I mean, we can't go around banning books because, banning books, that always...
Oh, yeah, we don't need to ban them. We just need to explain them. We need to show them to people and teach them
we need to talk
the
about
historical context.
Like, we have so many... There's a lot of parents that are freaking out that their kids are being taught about Islam in history classes.
Right.
And the reason that they're being taught about Islam is because it's part of the history of that part of the world. They're not being taught that Islam is real. And a lot of them are like, they're not being taught anything bad about Islam. And I'm like, dude, it just says that, like, they went through conquest and murdered the shit out of people to get them to come along to their side of the beliefs.
How you don't think that's
a bad thing? That's not bad? I mean, it's not just saying, oh, Islam is so good, but they're like, oh, they don't like the fact that they're being taught that, Islam is, the scientists and stuff came up with all these good things that we still, that are important. And it's like, they just want it to be, Islam's bad, and that's all they want them to learn about it. But that's not the way that you should go about that. That's not accurate. That's not historically accurate. You have, whenever you're teaching about the history of a region and how their culture developed, you have to do it honestly. You can't just say what, you know, people want
You can't
want
lie
to
about
believe
something and
it.
expect that to fix it.
Because, like, they're trying to revise American history. Like, they want to say
They want to say
that...
Moses wrote the Constitution or some shit like that.
Yeah, like, these are the same people that want... So, basically, what they want to happen is they want it to be taught that Islam's just bad. You don't need to know anything about Islam. It's just bad, it's bad, it's bad. And then Christianity, good, 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 good. And, like, that's not the way it is. There's bad things and there's good things that have come from these religions all throughout history. Because, I mean, it's not like everything has been bad. But then also, there's been a lot of bad. And you have to be honest about it and say why it happened.
Yeah,
historically accurate.
I was talking to a guy on our page, and he was saying, oh, these Muslims, they don't care about you, they just want to kill you because it's in their book, the true Muslim does this, true Muslim does that. And I was like, yeah, I know, it's so much like Christianity, it's crazy. And he goes, wait, no it's not. And it's just like,
yeah, it is.
What are you talking about? And then the argument got really one-sided to where he was saying, oh no, those back in the Crusades weren't true Christians and all that stuff. And I'm like, how are you even able to use the word true? You can't use the word true because...
The no true Scotsman fallacy there.
Yeah, how do you explain what's true when everybody has a different interpretation? I mean, I looked up the verse...
That's why there's so many denominations.
I looked up the verse on murdering non-believers in the Quran, and there were so many different interpretations of it that it all depends on your environment. It depends on what humans you were around when you were taught this idea. And that alone should be plenty of evidence, being that man created religion, but most people just don't like to see it that way. It's kind of ridiculous. But we need to reform these books to the point where they become historical fiction, just like the Odyssey, just like the Iliad.
I mean, it'll happen with time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen in our generation.
In our lifetime, no.
But the world is moving in the right direction. There are
Social
more
evolution.
and more people. Yeah, I mean, but we're at a pretty, whenever the scales start to tip, the people that are still on the bad side of history, they try so hard to prove that they're the right ones. Like in the civil rights movement, they tried so hard to hold on to it.
Segregation.
To segregation. And then now, it's like you look back on that, and a lot of them that are still alive, even they think they were assholes back then. They're like, man,
not all of them, but
asshole. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. Like, a lot of them are like, wow, man. Like, they'll see the pictures of themselves from back then, and they're just like, I can't believe that I was so ridiculous. But it's that whole mob mentality and how people just go along with whatever they were taught.
Yep. It's
and
freaking ridiculous.
And so we're getting to the point where more and more people are raising their children in secular environments. And so those children are less likely to grow up and be religious.
Right, and one example of that is the fact that most moderate of any religion, Muslim, Christian, they have secular humanist views. They feel equality, they appreciate diversity, they don't murder their children for not believing in God, as it says in Deuteronomy and things like that. So when their child starts having these doubts and things like that, they're not like, you better believe or else I will slay you, or anything like that. They're saying, oh, if you have doubts, that's fine, that's part of faith. And then if, they come to lose their faith, they might say, oh, you'll find it again, and things like that. They're not trying to freaking hang their kids or ostracize them or anything like that, because they've evolved past that. They've evolved that tribal mentality.
And because it's not socially acceptable to do that anymore.
Because of
which
evolution.
in some areas it's still socially acceptable to do that, but now with the internet and things, we're able to shine flashlights into these dark corners of the world where it'd be like, whoa, what the hell are these people doing? And then they get to hear from outside, what you're doing is totally screwed up. You should really knock that shit off.
Yeah, people in Iran, people in Syria that contact others throughout the world on the internet, they see how we live, and they feel like they deserve it because they do. But they're surrounded by all of this craziness. And just like in Nigeria, Emo David grew up educated and learning all these great things, and when he looked around and saw the atrocities being caused by religion, he thought, these people need to know what I know. These people need to learn reality. They need to see and open their eyes to what's around them instead of focusing on the afterlife and allowing people to just murder each other for no reason, no real reason. So that's what needs to spread.
Yep. Basically, just education. That's what's going to
save the
make the world a better place. Yep.
Just
the
like
more
GoldenEye.
educated people are, the less likely they are to hurt each other.
Yep.
Because the more educated that you are, the less threatening the world feels.
Right.
Because whenever you're not educated about things and why things happen, your brain tells you, I mean, like, even if you didn't have, like, somebody teaching you crazy shit, just imagine that, like, you were born in some place all by yourself, and then you're trying to make sense of the world around you. If you don't understand it, it's going to be terrifying. And humans have fight or flight. You either run away from it or you fight it. If you don't understand it and you're scared of it. Yeah, you're stuck on instinct. And so education makes us not be so stuck on instinct. It helps us not be afraid so we don't go into fight or flight mode. But like the people that are joining ISIS and things, that they're not well educated. They're not, they are not feeling loved and accepted they're not receiving all of the things that they need to be living a fulfilling life. And so
they look towards the afterlife. I have a story actually about somebody who went over to ISIS. Somebody that lives in the building that I work at, she's very connected politically and stuff like that. She was at this crazy Democratic meeting or something, spoke with this lady. The lady's daughter actually went over to Syria to join ISIS, and the lady ended up receiving a call about a month later, a few weeks later, or something like that, and the girl was telling her, it was the lady's friend's daughter, and she was telling her, tell my mom not to come look for me because everybody that comes to look for their kids ends up being tortured, molested, killed, all these crazy things, and she has to give up on me because if the daughter was to ever return to America, she would be immediately blacklisted as a terrorist. So this girl went over there, saw what entailed becoming the ISIS belief, and she immediately was like, holy crap, I made a wrong move, let me call my mom. And at that point, there is nothing else that can be done. She has to basically either escape by herself and end up living as a refugee, literally like the Syrian refugees, and she won't be able to come back to America or to any of the European Union countries. She'd have to just live on her own, basically. So she's completely and utterly fucked in every sense of the word.
She made a bad choice.
Yeah, really
bad life choice.
And what's crazy about that, though, is, she was only like 18 or something like that. So, she's so young. She made this choice just as many teenagers would do in a rebellious stage, to where they're, feeling angst and feeling rejected and all these things.
It's the same reason why a lot of people join gangs.
Exactly. And at this point, though, she joined the very much wrong gang, to where there is no coming back after that. So
yeah,
it's fucking crazy. That's a pretty sad story. That lady, I mean, shit.
Yeah.
Her daughter's gone.
Yep.
Gone for good.
So that's probably a good point for us to wrap up the episode. We will no show next week. Everybody enjoy your Thanksgiving week.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, and then the week after that, we will have Rebecca Vitzman on December 1st. And then on December 8th, we will have David G. McAfee. So, and that will be the last episode of the season before we take a break until January 12th. So
season 2.
Yeah, so 2 more episodes until you guys get a break from us for a month.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments or feedback, leave them in the comments. Email us. Check out our website. Check out our Facebook. Follow us. Subscribe to us. Do all the good stuff on social media. And
join our group, Those Atheist People. We will continue the discussion in there. So if you're not in that group, go to Facebook, search Those Atheist People. Yep, Those Atheist People. Join that group, and you can talk with other fans of the show about what we talked about tonight. And so everybody have a great night. Have a good week. And we will... Week after that.
I'm going to keep forgetting, so it's whatever. All right, have a good night, everyone.